share my entire window here. No, that's wrong. I'm gonna share my entire screen, sorry. There we go. And let's see if I can get this text on the right side. Alright, viewer 2 is asking, I'm looking to create a data entry and retrieval system. I'm wondering if Ragic can allow me drag and drop design. Sure. Usually you can create any type of data entry system with Ragic. It's basically a form building when you're designing the database. When you're just getting started, you basically design a form with either typing or drag and drop. So I'll show you how to create a form. Do you want to like give us an example on what you're trying to build so that we can like go by the example and it will be kind of closer to what you're trying to do? I'll copy paste this message again about the audio for people who are just joining, and we'll wait for a response from viewer 2 in the meantime. Other users, don't be afraid of interrupting anything. You can just write your own questions and then we'll get back to them when we can. Okay, more feedback from viewer 2 is he's saying, I am setting up a new business and have 3 divisions that need to cross-share info. Alright, so you're sharing the information about probably customers, which have their first names, last names, address, and whatnot. Last communication, that's a very good point actually. A lot of times when you kind of talk to someone, you don't know if your colleague has done the same thing or not, so you want to keep that information too. And then they have forms that sometimes need to be downloaded, which is fine. Alright, let's build a very simple contacts database then. This is what I do in a lot of webinars, and we can go through that very fast, and you can, if you want, you can refer back to our previous webinars for that again after this one, but I'm gonna build a very simple one here. Alright, okay, so I am going to create a new tab. So the tabs, I get this question a lot. The tabs are only for categorization. It's not like very important at most points. It's just a folder. So I'm just gonna write contacts over here and save that tab. So here is where I'm creating a new sheet, which is going to take me to the form page where I'm going to design the form with what you're saying, drag and drop. Viewer 2 is further elaborating, saying the forms need to be downloaded by the staff members and they would like to have documents available to pull down and send to clients, which is totally doable in Ragic. So let's create our first contacts database, and let's pretty straightforward. So this takes you to the form page design mode, and there are 2 ways of creating new fields. I kind of like to just type on empty cells, but you can drag and drop the things you see over here on the left side too. So usually when we create a first name, last name type of thing, it's a free text field. So in the free text fields, you can write anything, selection and multiple selection, or where you can put options, and these are all field types, different field types where you can store different types of data. And for first name and last name, I like to use free text again. Because you know you like to enter anything you want into those fields, but there's one thing that is very important here. Usually when you're designing each form, you kind of want to have an identifier, so a unique identifying field that will tell one contact apart from the other overall my contacts database. Why is this important? Because I see a lot of times that people just use the full name or the first and last name, but that can cause a problem. For example, if I had a John Smith in my database and then another John Smith becomes my contact, this person has the same first name and last name with the other John Smith, which may cause some confusion among your staff members. And also in the database linking, it's always good if you have one identifier to link your one sheet to another. So what I like to do in these cases are I like to give them a number, or if you know that they have a unique email address or a phone number, you can use that. But I like to make Ragic auto-generate a number because I just don't think about it after that, right? So I'm going to add this first on my field, and it says number right now, but I can change the field name. So I'm going to type, what should I type? Contact ID. So right now Ragic can auto-generate a number for me in this formatting. Yeah, so the client ID is for me to, identify one contact from another right now. I mean, you can use anything that works for you. Maybe you have a customer registration thing, or, usually people use their phone numbers, or they might have their membership numbers or whatnot. So it depends on how you run things in your company. A lot of people I see, they have their own system already. Some people don't have their own system. If you don't, you can always have Ragic populate empty auto-generate fields so that they would have a number each if you're importing your data. So usually it's important because we want to identify contacts from each other, and it goes for every single type of data you want to store. If I had two different products that are very similar, I would probably have different product IDs for them, and I would use that. But for people, it's good when you want to use a number instead of their first name and last name, or an email address that's personal to them, which works alright most of the time. If you think you deal with companies more and you have a lot of info at something.coms, then that might not work very well because there might be several contacts in different companies. Several contacts that are in the same company that use the same email address. That does happen. People sometimes don't have their personal email address in their company, and it gets confusing. But again, the contact ID that Ragic generates right now works for me, and you can change the formatting here. There are some preset options here, but you can also change over here. Yes, Ragic can link multiple sheets with the client ID, and I'll show you how in a bit. So I'm gonna make Ragic generate a C, so it will go with C hyphen and then 00001 in this format, and you can kind of change that formatting in some ways. And let's go with the first name. As you can see, I just clicked on an empty cell and started typing in it, and that will create a new field on my form. So this is kind of not like a spreadsheet when I'm designing it. This is kind of like a form that has empty fields. This is what we call the form page, and when you're changing the design, you always change it from the form page. When you're doing formulas or linking sheets together, you always want to do that on the form page. There is another mode that shows up, which I will show in a bit. Alright, let's move on to the last name. And you said I'm looking at your example address, and less communication, I'll get to that. So okay, alright, so these are my basic contact information, and I'm gonna kind of save that first and show you how to create new records. So this was the design mode when we first created the sheet, and if I exit from here, it's going to go to an empty form page. So this is the form that I just designed, and this is the edit mode that we're seeing. Alright, so I can either click new here, or on the other mode there's going to be a red new button in the same place to create a new record. And you can see that this kind of changes the buttons when I do that, and it goes like save and cancel. So this is the form page still, but I'm in edit mode. I'm creating a new record. So just type in there to kind of add your data. And their address, and I'm gonna save this. As you can see, the address turned blue. The reason for that is if I go to the design mode again, you can always go back and change the design, by the way. If I go back to the design again, you'll see that it writes address over here, so it's an address field type. The reason for this to not become a free text when I created it is sometimes Ragic kind of grabs whatever you're writing into the field name and selects the appropriate field type. So I just wrote phone and it became a field type, but if that wasn't what you're looking for, you can always change the field type. It kind of formats your data that's stored in there in certain ways sometimes, so I can kind of like select the formatting over here, and this is very useful, especially when you have a lot of like numeric fields and you're doing calculations and whatnot. So the input kind of helps. If I like make up a phone number and save it, it will format according to the formatting I had in there. So the address also, like, it creates a link type of thing, and if I click on it, it will go to Google Maps and search for that you know, address that I just added. So if you kind of write addresses in a way that Google Maps is comfortable searching with, or your city's like general format of rating addresses, then it's pretty accurate when you're looking for that certain place. Anyway, moving on, you mentioned less communication. So there's a few ways of doing that. For example, you can have comments on the contact over here with that your colleagues can also see. So anyone who has access to this sheet, this data, would see all the comments if they want to. That's a good way of doing some things, but not in all cases. So most of the time when I'm when I do have a team and I want to contact some people, I kind of want to see all the history, right? And see what we talked previously and whatnot. So you can kind of customize that by adding a few fields, but you're not gonna like do that for each time you wanted to contact this person. So what we do is I am going to add a subtable over here that can collect several entries. What that means is so if I had a field here saying contact last contact time, and I can kind of make that an auto-generated field instead of a date field, because there is a way of creating a timestamp over here. So let's select this one that will kind of write the date by year, month, and day, and then with a number. So I kind of like removed the PO that was in the example. And usually, you know how I just like created a field by writing in an empty space? And usually when we have the record's value, it's right next to the field header, right? So it's stored the field name, and this is the editable part where the value is stored, right? So Sophia, first name Sophia, right? Pretty straightforward. And in this case, I'm going to ignore where this data is going to be stored, okay? In the design. So let's go back to the design, and I'll zoom a little bit in so that you can see more clearly. Okay, so I'm going to ignore this part where we'd usually have the value, and I'm going to select contact. I'm going to type contact type. So this is a new field, right? And you can see that the white part of the field shifted downwards when I did that. So this is a subtable. When you add 2 or more fields like this by ignoring the space next to it and typing directly in, this is how you create a subtable, and that would kind of create space for you to add multiple records in. So this Sophia's we're gonna contact Sophia more than one times, right? And each of those times I can just put in here, and we'll be able to kind of like expand on that. So notes, and well, I guess that is enough for now. Contact type. So you can see that I said type, so it turned into a selection field. Selection field is a drop down menu basically, and you can rate the options over here. So how did we contact Sophia? With a phone, web conference, meeting, or what else can I say? Referral, email, things like that. Alright, so these are all the options I want to see when I'm filling that form, and you can also allow the users to add new options if you wanted to. I'm going to save this and then exit. So for Sophia, let's say that today we contacted her in an email and then cold email if I'm doing prospecting, and then she replied with an email saying wants more information, and then we called her, talked about products, and you can see that as I add new entries in the subtable, it will kind of expand. So as I save it, you can see that there is a timestamp generated over here. You can always change that format. I mean, you don't have to have it auto-generated. You can manually type in the date and time if you wanted, or do something else, but this is pretty practical in some cases. And as I add more entries, the subtable will have more room to expand into. So you'll always have more space in the subtable, and this is how you can keep your data about like contacting this person. Is that clear so far? Any questions so far from anyone? Alright, and okay, so next up, what I usually do in this case, yeah, if you have a set of catalogs, so if you have a set of products, you can kind of have another like tab over here called sales, and then save that. Let's say we have products, and then save that. So what do we usually have in products? Product ID or barcode or anything that identifies one product to another. When you meant catalog, maybe you meant something that is similar to keeping data with vendors, right? Different vendors and whatnot. Maybe that's what you meant. Anyway, I'm going to go with the example of products, and we can go back to the catalogs if you want. Product name, price, and as you can see, it turned into a money field on its own. And if you don't like the formatting, I know a lot of people don't like 5 decimal points, so I'm just going to delete that. 25 products, and each has a brochure. Sure, I mean, you can attach the brochure if you want to and make it like a file upload field, or if you have like a lot of things to add, you can make another subtable over here with, for example, kit name and then brochure upload file in a subtable. Alright, that's also possible. Let's actually do that. Like, shown as a drop down. I mean, how? So you have several brochures for several each product, right? Pick from a list, download and email. I think in your case it would be better to use one of our plugins. Do you store these in anywhere, or do you just store it locally? Do you store these brochures on the cloud? Do you store it on your computer or on the company server somewhere? Because it doesn't really make sense to download it each time you want to email it to the client if you already have the files. Alright, let me just save this first, and then S3, I don't know what. Okay, well, we do have an integration with Dropbox. That might work. Oh, alright, yeah, Amazon S3. We don't really have integration with them, but we do have integration with Dropbox. So let me just show how to download that. So there is an install templates over here. If you click on that after hovering on the start tab and scroll down, we're under the Office Manager tab, and if you scroll down, I think it's the 5th. Yeah. So number 5 is Dropbox document management, and that would take you to this system where you can actually have well, setting this up is pretty much like connecting, creating a link between your Dropbox folder and Ragic, and that kind of, you connect with one folder inside your Dropbox, so it doesn't connect to the main Dropbox folder you have, but a subfolder. If you don't have a subfolder, you can make one, and it kind of like shows all of your Dropbox file inside, like entries over here. So a few advantages to doing that is your files are stored in Dropbox, not Ragic, so it doesn't count to your storage quota in Ragic. And second of all, yeah, kind of. So you can, I think you can send it or share it directly within here, or you might be able to get the Dropbox link. I'm not sure about that, but this works really fine if you have a lot of files, and because the search, you know that Dropbox, you can only search for file names, but in Ragic you can search for the text within the actual files, so that's a very good advantage of using Ragic with Dropbox. And let me think, this might work for you. I'm not sure what you want to do exactly, but usually this works better in terms of you don't have to share your entire folder to send a file to a person. Alright, so apart from that, I mean, you can kind of link that sheet to your products sheet and like the several files under there, I guess. And then let's assume that, okay, let's assume that we had like, we didn't have this over here. I'm just going to show you how to link the products with a context to a sales order kind of thing, or like a quote sheet. Let's make a quote sheet. Okay, let's add a couple products first. Optical mouse. And then SD card reader. Just looking at the items around me. Save. Alright, so let's make a quotes sheet from here. Now comes the tricky part, kind of tricky part. So when we create a new quote, we want a quote ID to be generated by Ragic. And then, well, yeah, I'm just gonna select this predefined thing. And for the quote, I want to be able to select one of my customers to be able to generate a quote for them. And then what I want is I want a list of my products that are going to be selected under this quote, right? So I'm going to go to sheet linking tools. So this is where all the linking tools are kind of, you know, listed. And link and load is one of the most commonly used ones. Link and load, what this does is it will show you one field that you can select the data from. So I'm gonna use my contact ID, and I'll select the contact ID to get all the other information related to my customer. Alright, so if I click here, it will take me to this linking configuration sheet. And from here, I'll select my contacts tab and go to my contacts sheet. And you can see that I can select my contact ID. So this with the blue link is the contact ID, which is my linked field. So I'm going to select a contact ID, and the first name and last name will be filled by Ragic, and also their address. Yeah. And then after that, I would like to go to my products and have the product ID selected for me, and the product name and price will populate automatically from the product sheet. By the way, I want the product name, I want the quote to have several products in it sometimes, so I'm going to do the same thing I did when I was creating a subtable. I'm going to link these horizontally by ignoring this white place where the value would have been, and create a subtable like this. Alright, so this is how to do link and load basically, and let's test this out. So I'm going to create a new quote here. My contact, I can either click this arrow over here and select from the window that pops up, so you can kind of use these to filter people if you had like thousands of contacts, or you can just type the contact ID and select the one that is appropriate. Alright, so you can see that Sophia Hampton and her address is populated automatically, and she's buying an optical mouse and an SD card reader. Alright, so I kind of want the quote to add a markup, and well, not a markup, but I want her to be able to select the quantity and get the total of the quote, right? So I'm going to change the design here and add some fields to the subtable that I linked. So I'm going to add in quantity, and I'm going to add the subtotal of each row, and then what I need is the total for my quote. And you can also add the tax or whatever you need in this case, and the subtotal. So okay, these are my fields, and I will need some formulas for here to calculate the actual subtotal and the total, right? So far so good, right everyone? Here, the thing you need to take care of while adding formulas in Ragic is we always refer to the field headers, which means in this case my price is always C8, where my field header, the blue part, is, and my quantity is D8. So E8 is going to be C8 times the quantity of the product, right? D8. So I'm gonna go select my subtotal over here and go to the formula tab and write that. So C8 times D8 You don't really have to write like, the equals sign because it's already a formula field in here, so that's different from your spreadsheet program. And the total is going to be the sum of E8, which is the subtotal of each product price times quantity. And for that, I only need my subtotal field, but if I write E8 directly to the total, it will calculate the sum because the subtotal is a subtable field. Alright, so I'm gonna save this and then let's test this out. Let's say she wanted 10 optical mouses, and right away you can see the totals are being calculated automatically, so I'm not really doing much. And 20 SD card readers. Alright, so that is already calculated, so I can just hit save and the total is calculated for here. Alright, what's next? Let's see. How about allowing access to your sales team? Of course, there are quite a few different types of access that you can give to your users. So usually what sales teams need are not adding new maybe adding new customers. So you can make this one open for them to add new entries, and for quotes you can have them generate quotes, and then so basically what you do is you don't really need to create a different password protected front end because the Ragic already has that. You kind of add your users to your account to allow them access. So right now I'm the only user in the account because I opened it, so I am the sysadmin. If I wanted to add new people, I would go to account setup over here under the start tab. So account setup, and that would go directly to my users page. So when you want to add a new user, you just click new and then you add their email in. So their email and full name are the only thing that are required. This form you can add new fields in, but don't edit the system fields, please. And this is where you add new users. So how do people have different types of access? You kind of configure what type of user groups they are in. So you can see there's a bunch of default fields that we have over here. So by default everyone is a user and you yourself are the sysadmin. So the system administrator has access to the backend. So the design mode is only accessible by the system administrator. Nobody else could see the start tab over here, so your account setup and settings are only available to the system administrator. Similarly, deleting sheets and tabs and whatnot, other people can't do that, the system admin can. So be very careful on who you add to the system administrator user group. That is the highest rate ever. And all the other ones are configurable. So everyone over here, the special ones I'm going to talk about, everyone is anyone. So usually when you are setting access rates, so the group is set on a user's basis, and when you're configuring who can see what sheet, then you kind of configure the access rate according to group. And you can add one user to several groups. They will just see the sheet in the highest setting they have. Does that make sense? Alright, so the everyone is kind of special when you're configuring the access rate. If you open, if you make everyone a viewer in that sheet, that means everyone. So anyone off the web. So if you gave a link to that sheet, and this is most useful if you want to kind of put your products on your website. So that kind of viewer, right, goes from everyone. And these are some system defaults that we made, like HR, IT, management, sales, because they are kind of classics and a lot of people have these departments in their companies, but you can add your own user groups or do custom ones, I mean, it's just like adding a new group from here. You can add users into one group or two groups and then configure the access rates later. So I'm going to like make up a user here. Let's see. I'll just use my personal email address. Can't type my own name. How funny. And I'll make myself IT person, okay? So if I had only like put myself in the IT, then it kind of depends on what I set for each sheet, okay? So if I go to a sheet individually, I can set the access rights from the design mode, but here we have the access rights panel, which makes it easier to see. You can kind of see each user group that has been configured. If you add more user groups, they will show up, and right now the IT user group has no rights to any of the sheets, so even if they can log in, the account will be blank. But if I change their user right, they should be able to see the sheet according to what user right they have. So this is a good resource on looking at how the access right settings work. I'll basically show you the table over here. So if you configure someone as an admin, that is different than sysadmin. They will be able to view, create, or modify anything on your sheet. So it's again on a sheet by sheet basis. We have 3 sheets right now, our contacts and products and quotes that we just made. So an IT person, let's think, they shouldn't really be able to see the context, right? I'm gonna say like no rights for that one, and it's gonna go blank. But for the products, I want them to be a viewer. For the quotes, I can also make them a viewer so that they can check if anything is wrong. And let's say the HR needs to add new people, so they can be the bulletin user. So bulletin users, they can view all of the entries, create new entries, and modify their own entries. Alright, you can alternatively make them an admin if you want them to modify other people's entries as well. Okay, so there are a few different access rights, and we do have an extra setting. It's not in this global access rights panel, but in individual sheets. So for example, if I went to my contacts sheet and go to design mode, on the form settings and access rights, you can see if I select a bulletin user or a survey user, there are these no edit and no create options. So if I wanted someone to be able to edit entries and view all entries but not create any entries, then I can check this option and disallow them the creation. Alright, so those are some extra settings. You can find all this information on the access rights documentation sheet we have. Again, that's accessible from your account setup, or if you want to learn Ragic, you can type access over here and it will just pop up over here. But I'm gonna send this in the chat. There are a lot of things you can configure, so please make sure that you're you know what types of rights you want to give your users first, and then think on how to configure that on Ragic. Alright, I hope I made that clear, and anyone else have any questions so far? Or like an off-topic question can do well as well. So regarding the access rights, I mean, I know that the sales people you have are internal, and they will probably need to access the database every day and do things. But if you had like vendors or other people who are uploading their catalogs to your system, then you can give them external user access. And external users are basically people who can create entries or view entries only. So they have very limited rights, but it's very useful in most cases where you have to have some other people outside your company access your database. There's also a way to give people temporary access to your database to just check on an entry about them, and that can be done by their email address. So you can have an email field, and there's an option to kind of let Ragic notify them about what you've created, and then they can access that one entry from the email they receive. So that's another option you can consider if you want to give external access to just other people outside your company. All right, next question, please. Does anyone else have any questions about the access rights? There are a lot of options, so I do get sometimes if you want to do something or have like a different type of access right, it might be a little bit um, looking through the documentation. So if you have a question right now, just let me know and I'll do my best to reply, like for a specific case. Regarding viewer two's question, they want their sales team to do data entry, so I'm assuming they're kind of like adding contacts and maybe adding quotes or invoices and whatnot. So usually if that's the case, you probably need to give them bulletin rights, and you can restrict some of the rights if you want. So again, the bulletin can view all entries, create their own entries, create new entries, and modify their own entries. And you can kind of like set the no edit option so that they can't like edit other people's or like their own older entries. You can assign like a manager to be able to edit them as an admin or a regular bulletin user in a different user group. Jeff is asking, can you show how to link two sheets together? Select from one to another. So I just showed that in the beginning of this webinar, but I'll do that again. So let's create another sheet. So we have here a contact sheet. So I have very basic fields about one contact, and let me add another contact. Alright, and as you can see, I forgot to mention this to you all. When I create more than one entry, you can see that the page that this goes back to with the arrow over here, or the page that you will see when you first open your contacts sheet, well, each sheet will be something like a spreadsheet like interface. So you will be able to see your entries in a glance in this way. So you kind of have some freedom on editing this page to kind of remove the columns you don't want to see at a glance, but this is really a good way when you are looking at your entries in the browse mode like this. So we can see all our contacts in a glance, and then we can see all our products in a glance like that, and kind of look at the pricing. So this is what we call the listing page, which I mentioned about earlier as another mode, and this is still the same sheet. So your form design always stay the same, but the data inside is of course going to change. So each entry is listed in a row in the listing page when you're looking at it. Okay, what were we doing? Okay, I was going to create an invoice, right? Actually, let's create a sales order, and then we can kind of generate an invoice from that sales order, so I can show you another different type of linking. Okay, so I'm gonna create a sales order sheet, and again, this is the same as the quote, so I think Jeff joined later than our other users here, but we'll very quickly go through this. I create a sales order ID. The reason I'm adding an ID field is to identify each sales order from another. So this can be an auto-generated field because I don't really want to type in or create an ID off the top of my head every time I am creating a new sales order. So I'm going to change the prefix here to be SO something something, like the date and then the number. And then what I want to do is link the customer name, because one customer is gonna, the contact is gonna place a sales order, and they're gonna place a sales order for several products, right? So we go to the sheet linking tools. This is how you usually link fields in Ragic. So I'm going to click on link and load. This is the most common way of linking fields. I will be selecting a customer from my contacts sheet and my contacts tab sheet. Okay, so I will be selecting a contact ID, and Ragic will fill the first name and last name and their address for me. Okay, so this blue thing is called our linked field. So I'll be selecting the contact ID field, and Ragic will pull the first name, last name, and address from my contacts sheet. And for my products that I will use in the sales order, it will be the product ID, product name, and price. So I'm going to select a product ID, and the product name and price will be populated from the product sheet I had. The reason I linked these horizontally are because I want to have more than one product in my sales order. Okay, I'm going to save this first. And again, other viewers, you have seen this before, but I am very quickly going to add the quantity of the products I'm going to buy, and then the subtotal, and a total field to calculate the final price. Alright, so the last thing I need on this sheet is a formula to calculate the subtotal for each row and the total of everything over here. So we always refer to the field headers over here. So the subtotal is going to be in the formula tab, and I'm going to write C8 times D8, D8. And that's going to be each line item, and the total is going to be E8 itself because it's a subtable field, and when I refer to the header, it's going to do a sum automatically. Alright, so let's create a new sales order from, let's say Katy Perry ordered like 20 optical mouses, and then she also ordered 5 SD card readers, and you can see that the calculations are done automatically. So this is the most common way of selecting from one another. Another type of linking would be if I wanted to generate a sales order from the quote. So what would I do? Like, it's gonna be the same data in here, so I don't really want to like manually type everything again, and I can't really use the select option for each thing again. Like, I did here. So what I can do is I can go back to the quotes and then click on here. If I go to change design, and again all our linking options are listed here. So I can create a convert records button that will create a sales order from the quote. So basically what this does is it copies values from one sheet to another, and you kind of map the fields to be copied. So I'm going to click here, and it's going to ask me which sheet I want to convert to. I want to generate a sales order from the quote, so I'm going to select sales order here, and it's going to ask me to map field. So use value from this field and fill in this field. I think that's pretty straightforward. So I want the contact ID to become a contact ID over there. The sales order ID will be generated on that new sheet because it's an auto-generated field. And then the first name is going to populate from here. Last name is also going to be populated from here. The address is the same. And then the products will also be copied as well. So this kind of copies all the values I had here to there. I know this is very, like, these two sheets are very similar, but sometimes you might have like very different sheets that you want to like copy from one another. This is also very useful in most cases when I want to make, like, when I want to save more than one record from the same sheet. So if I generate a quote, I can send that once, and then I can change some things here on the quote and send another sales order if I wanted to. I mean, that's not always the case, but I think I have made myself clear, have I? Alright, so this is all mapped, and I'm gonna create the convert record button over here, and I'll say like generate sales order over here, okay? And okay, and it has generated a sales order button, and I'll need to save this form design again. And let's exit and see the button is over here under my actions. So if Sophia Hampton was like quoted this and she says, okay, I do want to order, I can generate a sales order for her, and it will save a record automatically generated from that sales record, that quote earlier. So this is another type of linking. And another type of linking I want to show you guys is I do want to list Sophia Hampton's sales orders under her own contacts page. So we already have a link between the sales order page and the contacts page, which is linked by here, the contact ID, because we used link and load to kind of grab the linked field that will make all these other fields from Sophia's contact page populate. So this is the field that links the sales orders to the contacts, right? What I want to do is display that reference back so that I can see all the sales orders Sophia has put in previously. So I'm going to go back to the contacts sheet for that, and go to any of these would be fine. You change the design once and it changes in every record you have. So it's kind of like a template that your data is displayed in. And I'm going to select this show references from existing sheets. Now this only works because I already linked the contact ID to my sales order sheet. So I'm going to select the sales order and drag and drop this box, and right away it's showing me which fields are selected. I don't need the first name and last name and address, I just need the total of the sales order and the sales order ID. The reason I don't want these is I already have them on my contacts over here. So right away I'm clicking insert subtable and saving, and if I exit, the sales orders that Sophia Hampton has put in are already being displayed over here. So if I hover on this, it will show me the sales order itself. And if you have a bunch of sales orders, you can just hover on them to see which one is, you know, the one. And you can also, I think, create a link here so that if you click on it, it will directly go to that. Or if you don't want to do that, you can click this little link over here to go to that one sales order. Pretty neat, huh? So these are the most common linking types that we have showed today. Another one is that you can kind of have a duplicate of a sheet to kind of, it's usually used for different versions of the same sheet. So for example, one is for external use and people are filling a form, and then internally you have a different version where you record other data that is related to whatever your form is, and you can have like your own fields. And again, access rates are very important here. You can configure your internal users to be able to see the internal version. Alright, any questions so far? Viewer 5 is saying, can you delete one contact and delete a tab? Yes, but again, you can do that if you're a system administrator. So this is to prevent accidental deletions. You can still restore them if you accidentally deleted things, but I'll show you how to delete everything. So if you wanted to delete one contact, so we're currently in that one contacts page, right? So you click tools over here, and under editing you'll see delete entry, so you can delete that contact itself. If you wanted to delete all your contacts, you can go to the listing page. So again, this is the listing page where everything is shown, right? So if you go to tools, it shows delete all filtered this time. This means that if you had a search or a filter applied with all the filtering options over here, or you can do searching through here as well, or the top search bar you can also do searches in, it kind of filters the records that are shown here. You can basically batch delete the ones that you see at that time with delete all filtered. If you don't have any filters applied, it will delete all your records in that sheet. And regarding a sheet or a tab, you can just hover on it. So if I wanted to delete a sheet, I can just hover on it, and either clicking on this arrow over here, or by right clicking on the sheet name, it will show you how to delete the sheet itself. Same for the tab, it has an arrow when you hover on it, and when you right click on it, it will show the delete option. Again, you can also rename everything and change change the sequence of the tabs and sheets to your liking, and that is always very good for organization within your company. And these tabs are all like colored differently, so if you already have some color codes within your company, you can like move them to the appropriate order. Another thing, if you accidentally delete your data, either a sheet or tab or an entry, you can go to start account setup over here and your recycle bin. So I didn't delete anything, but and it shows up empty, but there you go. And again, deleting things are very limited in normal accounts. So I am currently in the professional version, so I have access to the feature settings over here. The feature settings, I can configure who can delete records. So the default is system administrator for deleting multiple records and single records, and you can configure all these rights to your liking if you have the professional version or up. Otherwise, it's pretty simple. I mean, the system admin has rights to delete things, basically. I hope that makes sense. No problem. Anyone else with any questions? It can be specific to your industry or whatever you're trying to build. Or maybe you have questions about Ragic itself. Anyone? I don't really mind answering very specific questions. I do get them all the time. So usually, if you're new to Ragic, you might not know this, but usually people do come to me and ask. For example, I have a real estate company and I would like to display all my listings to potential customers, and then how do I do this? I kind of want to put a gallery on my website that shows all the properties and whatnot. So that's very possible. I actually made that in a webinar recently, which is available on our YouTube channel. But if you have specific questions like that, I'm happy to answer and build a demo accordingly.